I want to talk this morning about a topic I'm not sure we've addressed here, if we have in a while, and I think it's another of the Buddha's brilliant of many of his one of his many brilliant insights. And the topic is the eight worldly winds, as he described them, and they're also called the eight conditions, the eight vicissitudes, the eight preoccupations, the worldly dharmas, the number of names. But he brilliantly described common challenges that we all face and then provided some skillful means to manage them. And the eight worldly winds are four pairs of opposites, and they represent fundamental pairs of opposing forces that he said blow through our lives, creating turbulence in our minds and hearts. And so for each pair, there's one element to which we get attached, there's one element to which we have an aversion and try to push away. Doing either will cause suffering, which we'll get into. The four pairs, just to give you the overview, and then we'll get into each one specifically, are gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, and pleasure and pain. And understanding these and learning to navigate these winds is really essential for finding peace, reducing our suffering. So I want to look at each pair separately briefly and then talk about how we manage them. So let's start with first gain and loss. And he talked about as the ebb and flow of tides occur, we experience constant cycles of gaining and losing things we value, whether that's material possessions, relationships, opportunities. When we gain something, we cling to it desperately. We try to deny the impermanence of it, and therein lies the suffering with the gain. And when we lose, we suffer it for obvious reasons because we've lost it, something we wanted to hold on to. So when we lose something, obviously the suffering is due to the loss. But the Buddha taught with gain and loss that true freedom comes from recognizing the impermanent nature of all things, whether it's holding on to something we want or losing something that we had, and also cultivating non-attachment. That the freedom comes from recognizing impermanence and understanding non-attachment. So that's gain and loss. The next pair is fame and disrepute. You know, we humans naturally want recognition. We fear obscurity and not being acknowledged. We chase after status. We chase after reputation. We chase after recognition. But we live in a constant state of anxiety of losing face or falling from grace. And so the pursuit of fame and the avoidance of shame keeps us trapped in this exhausting dance of ego protection and preservation, because fame and disrepute, that pair, really has to do with the ego. And again, the Buddha suggests that true peace comes from finding our worth beyond social status, whether by trying to achieve fame or by fearing disrepute. That if we let go of both of those, we begin to find greater peace in our lives. Next, we have praise and blame. And here he's talking about how we delight in compliments and we crumble under criticism. Okay, so praise and blame. And these winds can sort of temporarily lift us to heights of pride or dash us against the rocks of self-doubt. And our path helps us to receive or to experience praise and blame both with equanimity. We talked about equanimity a bit on Wednesday. And understanding that neither praise nor blame truly defines who we are. That our worth is not determined by these external judgments or even our own internal judgments of who we are. So this notion of having to be affirmed and praised or avoiding criticism or blame is another one we just have to learn to let go of. And then finally, and last but not least, are pleasure and pain. And this is probably the most fundamental pair, because we constantly talk about this, how we grasp at pleasant experiences, try to hold on to them, and push away unpleasant ones, which creates an endless cycle of craving and aversion. Okay. And when we're caught in this cycle of craving and aversion, it prevents us from experiencing the present moment fully. And the Buddha suggests that true contentment comes from accepting both pleasure and pain as natural parts of existence, as part of the human flow of the flow of human experience. So those are the four sets of pairs, the 8 worldly winds as he described them. So what do we do about all this? So that's the question. We acknowledge them, we see them how our lives experience them all the time. Well, we begin by setting an intention to seek balance. Okay. In other words, the key to working with the winds is not trying to stop them, because we can't. I mean, they're just going to happen. But we seek balance. We couldn't, if we tried, avoid the natural forces in life. Rather, we seek stability and we seek equilibrium in their midst. In other words, equanimity. You know, the metaphor that's often used is to think about a deeply rooted tree. We learn to bend with the winds without being uprooted by it. And in order to do this, there's a number of steps that the Buddha taught. First one is obviously our old friend mindfulness. Becoming aware, noticing how these winds affect our thoughts and actions. Oh, here it is again. Here's praise, here's blame, here's loss, here's gain. Seeing them and understanding them, that they're part of the fabric of our lives. Second is non-attachment, loosening our grip on preferred outcomes, on the positive, so-called positive side of each of the 4 pairs. Third is equanimity, the big one, developing balanced awareness, balanced perspective of all experience. And then finally, last but not least, is wisdom, and especially understanding the impermanent nature of all phenomenon, be they positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant. And in practical terms, we take those 4 practices and work with the winds by observing our reactions, noticing and observing our reactions to daily ups and downs on each of those 4 categories, noticing once we observe them when we're being pushed or pulled by those forces, and then maintaining perspective. What we often talk about here is spaciousness regarding their temporary nature. We see them in the larger picture. We see that they're temporary. Therefore, we can just be with them. And we cultivate inner stability. We cultivate equanimity with regard to them. By which I mean we respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. We talked about reactivity versus wisdom on Wednesday. We respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. Because the ultimate teaching of the 8 worldly winds is not that we should become numb or indifferent to life's experiences, not that we should be battered around by these winds, not that the tree should become uprooted and blown away, but that true freedom comes from understanding their nature and finding and maintaining our center, our groundedness, regardless of which way the winds blow. We set an intention to stay grounded. And we no longer seek to derive our contentment solely from external conditions, meaning the winds. We discover instead an unshakable peace that transcends those worldly concerns. We become our own port in the storm. And as we deepen our practice and deepen our understanding, we begin to see that these winds aren't obstacles to our contentment, but rather, as we often talk about, they are teachers on our path. We learn from them. They provide us opportunities to cultivate equanimity, to cultivate greater acceptance, to understand impermanence more deeply. Because the winds are going to continue to blow through our lives. They do so from the moment we come into the world, and they stay with us till the moment we leave this world. And through mindful practice and deep understanding, we learn to navigate the winds with grace, with wisdom, and with inner peace. an unshakable inner peace. And this is the heart of the Buddha's practice. This is the heart of the Buddha's promise. Not to escape life's challenges, even if we could, although we may try, but to find freedom within them, to learn to be with them in a way that frees us up from the vicissitudes, from being battered around by life's experiences and life's challenges. So that's a brief introduction to the 8 worldly winds. Let me do this.